Hello YouTube, this review will be for the iPhone 5, the new iPhone, and I will also try to show the main differences that we can call as a progress that Apple has achieved during the past few years, going from the first iPhone, the iPhone 1 or iPhone 2G, all the way to the iPhone 5. This is the Verizon version of the iPhone 5. The first thing I will be reviewing here is obviously I'm not going to talk about how major the differences are when it comes to speed, when it comes to browsing the internet, when it comes to having many applications running in the same time. Right now, I'm not running any applications on iPhone 5, but I had actually erased everything from the phone and erased it to basically factory settings so that you can see you can feel how it is, how it looks like exactly if you haven't purchased one yet, or if you've been waiting for your iPhone 5 to be shipped to you. And we know that it's taken forever for carriers to ship the iPhones due to the very massive demand. So basically what we can look at here, the first thing, as I said, I'm not going to go through the speed differences, whether the browsing and internet and downloading and 4G versus 2G and all that, because many people have reviewed these things already. I'd like to actually talk more about the feel of both phones, how they look, how basically you would recognize the difference in the interface, how it differs, how this new one differs. Obviously, one main question that people ask, especially those who do not like the iOS in general, is that how come Apple so far and for these years never really thought of changing the layout here, the how the main user interface looks like with these pages and how simple they are. And if you're actually comparing these two phones, this phone on the left here is, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years old. This one is just a month old. And if you show two phones that run Android, for instance, to anybody, one of them was released 3 or 4 years ago and the other was released a month ago, you will find tons of differences. But right now, when you're looking at these two phones, you can barely find any difference when it comes to the looks, when it comes to the user interface and so on. The clock icon the same, the maps almost the same thing, calendar and messages, the photos, they do not change much. And do not expect Apple to change much, because Apple has a huge fan base who simply like and love the simplicity of the iOS and how it is. So Android, I love Android too. I love iOS and I love Android. They're both great. What I do not love is Windows 7 and Windows 8. But they're both great. And when it comes to Android versus iPhone, it's a huge world of differences. And Android, of course, has all these customizations and so on. Here you can barely make a folder, maybe add new folders, maybe name certain things in a certain way, but that's pretty much it. And Apple, with their iOS and with the success that it has been, they are not going to change that, because they know very well they can change other stuff, which they have been doing and which we will be talking about right now. But they will leave this as is. They're not going to touch or even get near the user interface, because their fan base is in love with this. So this is the answer to why exactly it's been the same. And if you're looking at these two phones, I'm sorry that two phones are very too close to the camera, but basically, to me, if I was like coming to Earth from like another planet and somebody gave me these two phones, I'll say that okay, this one was probably produced a year ago and this is maybe this year's phone, but actually no, they're 3 or 4 years different. Anyway, enough about that. I'd like to talk about the feel of both phones. Actually, right now, and I might actually get like a scale and try to weigh both phones and see the weight of each of them. I'm sure people did it before, but I cannot feel any difference when it comes to the weight. Perhaps the iPhone 5 is slightly lighter, but I mean, you can barely feel that. That's when it comes to the weight. When it comes to the material itself, I mean, we're talking about like a repetition of what this phone had. This is, I mean, I can tell that they had one of these phones before, the big guys at Apple, and they were like, you know what, let's go back to this feel. Let's give people something that looks so sleek and in the same time will add to the to how light and how comfortable it is to use this phone. Basically, what they're doing is that, and this is something that, you know, Apple fans know by heart, is that they will never even change how wide the screen is. If you compare these two phones when it comes to the width, they're exactly the same, but you can sense like a little bit of difference when it comes to the edges here, to the right and left edges on the iPhone 5. They're like a little bit smaller, like compared to the first iPhone. So what Apple is trying to do is keep the width as is and go vertically to help you with, you know, an extra row of applications and so on, which I actually, by the way, I love how they thought of doing that, because now you don't get the feeling of, you know, like, let me do this here. This used to look as if one page of apps was like just too much. It was like overstacked, and you can't really feel that this is like you don't see anything new. Whenever you look at your phone, you feel like, okay, this is a page full of apps and there's no way to customize it. But this right here is slightly getting us towards feeling that there is a chance of moving forward with customizing the look. I'm not saying that they will change it, I don't know, but I don't believe they will ever change the actual interface. But who knows, maybe they will come up with the next iPhone will have even one more row of apps, and then in the same time decreasing the size of each app, allowing one more row, and in the same time going to from 4 inches right now to maybe 4.2 or 4.3 inches, again vertically only. But anyway, something else that you will feel if you have these two phones, if you have used both phones, is that when you hold the phone to your ear and you're making a phone call, the iPhone excels at the feel of not feeling like an extra weight or an extra like this heavy feeling over your ears, because the material from like in this areas here is very soft, and in the same time the space between the beginning of the edge here of the phone and all the way until maybe this line here, this is where you're usually the average user, this is how you place the phone, obviously, so that you can, if you're like in a crowded place and you want to make sure that you hear the other person on the phone call, you will stick it as much as you can next to your ear so that you're actually listening to the person, but that will not make you feel like after the phone call you feel like getting like two of your friends to just, you know, scratch your ears for you or something, which I've had this feeling with other phones before. So that's another thing. When it comes to the camera, I'm not gonna talk about it because there's a ton of videos about that. Obviously now we have flash. iPhones before the iPhone 5 also had flash. This one did not have a flash. The first iPhone lacked so many things. It even lacked, I mean, the first version ever, the first iOS when it came out, it lacked something very funny, which was actually the ability to copy and paste, which was ridiculous. And I don't know if that was a mistake or if they thought it wasn't that necessary, but now they came up right afterwards with the ability to just, you know, if you type something and you want to make sure what's happening, they added this lens, whatever, and of course that's helping now that they realized we need to get like the select all, then you can define, you can cut, you can copy, whatever, because with Android you can do this and even much more. Another thing I'd like to talk about very briefly here is how you can actually compare both phones when it comes to like which phone right now in the market would be the most stylish phone, the best looking smartphone. I'm going to put this on the side now because it's, when it comes to this comparison, it's not really in the game any longer, but I would say that the iPhone along with the new Motorola Razr M as in Mark, these to me are the best looking phones in the market right now. I love in this one here, you can see it's almost edge to edge, just like the Motorola are trying to advertise their Razr M, that it's edge to edge, that there is no much space between the first vertical row of apps to the right and the one to the left, and the distance between them and the actual phone itself from the side. All these things might seem trivial or silly to certain people because all they need is just a phone to make phone calls, but we're talking about smartphones, and we're talking about an industry that's growing in a very aggressive way. And we're in 2012. I'm sure that by 2020 we will have phones that will be perhaps, if you're looking at this phone and how thin it is, it's beautiful. In 2020, I'm sure we will have a phone that's maybe 1/3 this width or this thickness, or maybe even less. Maybe this concept of like a glass phone will come to reality, and we'll find it in the market at some time. They actually just produced a piece of glass that you can store data on, and it will stay forever. I'm not sure if it was Sharp or Hitachi or something, some manufacturer in Asia. So anyway, one last thing I'd like to talk about here is in settings. Of course, you get all these new stuff. You get like the do not disturb, and what that does is that if you had a very exhausting day and you come home and you're very tired, you just want to get some sleep, you can have the do not disturb setting to basically allow certain people, only certain people, to call you or text you, and you would actually listen, you would actually hear the vibration or the ringtone, and if it's anybody else, you will not be disturbed at all. So that's a good feature that I don't think any other phone had it before. The notification, and when it comes to iOS 6, I will make other videos about all the new features in iOS 6. if you're getting your mom or your dad an iPhone 5 and or even an 4 or 4S, any phone, any iPhone that will have iOS 6 and they have the do not disturb functionality, they will love it. They will think it's a very smart thing. I will wrap this up by talking very briefly again about the material itself in general. All around, this phone feels like perfect. I use a this case right here. It's very sleek and very tiny. I don't like the bulky ones, but really, if I didn't care about smashing my phone or dropping it and having it broken, I would not get a case, because the phone by itself, just like that, is perfect. I mean, they have engineered something that is beautiful and very, very, very easy to use. Again, I don't want to sound like an Apple fanboy. I'm gonna say again that at least the Motorola Razr M, the Galaxy Nexus, for instance, also these are great phones as well, just like the iPhone 5. And this will be it. Please stay tuned for more reviews and videos. I will be doing a video on typing and texting, and whether there is a significant difference when you type something for text messages, for searches on the internet, and etc. We'll be doing a video on that. Please stay tuned, and thank you so much for watching.